Tiny tree people, what's going on? Happy summer. I hope you're having a great one if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm excited to finally get a video out on trees and not buildings. So tonight in this video, I'm going to put together an Amur Maple forest made up of 13 to 15 trees that I've been growing from cutting for 4 to 5 years. And I'm excited to get this out also because I had some feedback. These comments were within a couple of days of each other actually, but Lisa said she liked the channel, she just found it, but she's hoping I can put out some more frequent content. And then Slacker Steve, shout out Steve, was a little more blunt and just said, I wish that you would put out more content. So I appreciate that feedback so much. I've got a ton of footage from this spring, been able to work on a lot of trees. And so I decided to chop one up quick based on those comments. And I'm actually going to show you the root pruning process, preparing to put this forest together and getting those root balls down to size so they can actually be arranged. And then I'll actually show you the full arrangement process of tinkering with the different angles of what this forest should look like. Something I didn't do on my Dawn Redwood Forest video that I heard a couple comments that you guys would like to see the actual process itself. So with that said, I'll talk about Amur Maple as a species and how I found it here in West Michigan. I think there's some pros and cons to it, and then actually show you the assembly process and bring you back here for an update. So excited to get this one out. Hope you enjoy. So when I first got started in bonsai, obviously you're learning about what species are best for bonsai, which ones have the best ramification, tight internodes, small leaves. And Japanese maple from a deciduous perspective was a really obvious choice, but what I read at the time was that it was a little bit sketchy to be leaving them outside, not buried in the ground, exposed to the elements in winter in zone 6A. It's right on the border. So I was worried about that, and I thought, is there anything else that's more hardy, that's more of a guarantee that I can just stick outside, mulch it up, and let it go for the winter with no problems? And I stumbled upon Amur Maple, or Acer ginala, or Acer ginala. I'll throw the Latin name up here. And this is a tree that's not native, but is from the Amur River Valley, I think is what it is, on the border of Russia. And is very, very hardy. So you can leave these suckers out on the deck, totally exposed, and they'd probably be fine. I do mulch them in, but yeah, I thought I had discovered my solution for my zone. And so I purchased one that was basically just a stump. I think there is a video out there of that tree and me working the roots on it. I'll link to that right now. And so I started to work with them, but I discovered that there were some issues with these trees that I don't really love. And so I ended up pitching that big stump of a tree that I purchased. It was only 40 bucks because I just didn't like the way it was growing. But during that time, during those couple of years that I was learning about Amur Maple, I took a ton of cuttings. 4 in this Anderson flat that are pretty thick. I've got 6 over in a grow box sitting outside the patio here. And then I've got 2 that are growing on their own, individually potted up. Bring this guy up here. Pretty good, nice, chunky. This is probably going to be the main tree. It's got some good thickness to it, and I've been growing it out thinking maybe I'll turn it into an individual tree. So let's talk about the issues with Acer ginala or Amur Maple. Yes, it acts a lot like a Japanese maple. You can get really close, tight refinement. It's got small leaves. It's got nice, beautiful actually, fall color. But a couple of things. First off, it wakes up. It's the first tree to wake up in my garden. So you're always dealing with the bonsai shuffle with these trees because they push buds so early because they're from freaking Siberia. So it makes sense because they've got a short growing season in their native range. And then the other thing that I've found is that they die back a lot. So if I prune these after the first flush of growth is hardened off, I get dieback sometimes, and I'll even lose a branch here or there. Japanese maples, you prune them after the first flush, they backbud perfectly, you've got no issues. I want to actually separate these and get them ready to put together. And in order to do that, I'm not going to take apart the containers or take them all out in one piece. So on this Anderson flat, as an example, maybe I'll bring you in for the detail cam to actually show you how I cut these apart. But I literally am going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut little circles around them, maybe 2-3 inches, to leave a root pad that's flat so I can put them together and assemble them. so we got all the trees out of the containers in nice little shapely DVD size cutouts for the roots, somewhat flat. And before I actually do put them all together, I want to do some pruning on these trees. You can see I've wired some movement into this one over the years. It does look kind of cool, but it also has a lot of random growth coming off in different spots. So I want to just quickly go through the 10, 12 trees here, prune them up, and then I'll actually get to assembly, and I'll do a little montage of this part. Alright, I've got all the trees pruned up, root pruned, and ready to go into the container. I've brought those root balls down to pretty small, and I'll probably have to keep doing that as I assemble them to make sure they fit. I've got 13 trees in all, and I'm going to start with this main tree here that's going to be kind of my mother tree by positioning it. So I'll give you this angle while I'm actually doing the assembly, and then hopefully a top-down shot. I'm going to do the Corin Greenwood Bonsai route just like I did for my Dawn Redwood Forest, where I've got soil already mounded in here. And unlike my Dawn Redwood Forest, I'm going to have this a little more undulating and sitting up above the rim of the pot. Imagining that maybe these are trees amongst some hills instead of, sitting in a floodplain, for example. So, and I want to make sure that the direction is similar. So, this forest it needs to mimic, right? The trees need to be mimicked as far as the mood. If some of these don't work, I'll just pop them out and sub in another one. In this case, I've got another pretty thick tree that I think I can use as my secondary tree. So we'll put some music to this. I'll mound up these trees, and you can let me know what you think when we're all done. It's early August, and I'd say it was a success overall. I love the way that this looks for a first-year forest. It even has the tallest tree and thickest tree in the forest as the tallest right now, and I've done no pruning, just let this thing run, and I'd say it's done growing at this point in the growing season. I normally get 2 flushes of growth out of my Amurs, whereas my Japanese maples and my native maples, I tend to get at least 3 and sometimes 4. So short growing season in Siberia means it only pushes a couple of times a year. And then I'm going to enjoy the scarlet fall color, mulch it, and make sure that it gets through winter without any issues. And then I'll try and take some footage of what this looks like as far as a canopy looks with the leaves off, and maybe show you the pruning process. I won't take this back significantly, right? But I am going to make some branch choices. So I'll be reducing a couple of shoots in select spots and doing some wiring to continue the trunk lines on these trees as it continues to develop. I'm hoping that 3 to 4 years, maybe I could put this into at least the club show. Maybe I'll do it sooner, we'll have to see, but overall very pleased with how this ended up. So I'd love to hear from you on what you would have done differently at any point during the whole process that you saw. What would you have done differently from a styling perspective? I'm pretty satisfied with it. I think there's quite a few trees in there, and we might have to take 1 or 2 out over time. But for now, it's where I wanted it to end up and how I envisioned these cuttings being used after thinking I was going to toss them. So I'm glad that I kept them, and I'm glad that we now have a cute little forest to work with. So let me know what you think. Always appreciate you joining, and I'll catch you next time.